NCAA, you have a problem. Deion Sanders says NIL money is causing behavior issues among players. Who would have thought giving a 17-year-old kid 7 figures would be an issue? See, this is what no one ever thought about, especially the people on ESPN who were so adamant about paying the players, and it's so ridiculous. These players, have this slave labor to where only the universities are profiting off of, the college football. And listen, for the most part, I agree, but this whole idea that NIL money is all going to be so just empowering and uplifting for players. Guys, these are 17, 18-year-old kids that are getting multi-million-dollar deals. These kids are idiots. They're 16, 17, 18. They have no life perspective. You know how stupid I was at the age of 17 or 18? You know how stupid I am right now to give me that money? If I could give any kid a word of advice, if he gets NIL money, I would literally just tell him, an 18-year-old kid, I would say, just put it in your bank. Have the self-awareness to understand you are so stupid right now as a 17 or 18-year-old. All 17, 18-year-old kids are dumb. Just put the money away, please. Save the NIL money. It's like you could see this from a mile away, and Deion Sanders, I'm sure he's talking to other coaches. He's talking to, different NCAA coaches with 5 stars. He gave, they got the whole Travis Hunter deal. It's going to have a very negative culture, locker room effect, and that's what schools like Ohio State, like Clemson, like Alabama were worried about. You've got 2 different approaches when it comes to NIL. You've got the Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson approach. They value culture. They're thinking, if we let our boosters give a kid $1 million or $2 million just to come here, just because he's a 5-star, that is going to severely negatively affect our locker room overall. And then you've got the Texas A&M school of thought. You've got the Miami is going to be huge in NIL in 2023. Guys, it's crazy what Miami is doing right now. Watch out for them with a lot of these 2023 kids, specifically from Florida. There's some big players. But you've got schools like Miami, Florida, and then Texas A&M, Tennessee, who really don't care. They're desperate to get elite talent into their building and on their campus, and they're going to do it any means necessary. And Deion Sanders, this is a guy that's keyed in, not just with Jackson State. Again, we know, he signed the number 1 overall player in the nation. He sniped the number 1 overall player in the nation from Florida State. Travis Hunter, committed to Florida State for over 2 years. Number 1 overall player. Could have been a 5-star as a cornerback or a receiver. That's how good this kid is. And on National Signing Day, after being committed to Florida State for 2 years, Deion Sanders snipes him, and now Deion Sanders is realizing, giving these kids this kind of money, not only, listen, this may be overall detrimental to these kids getting this money, and I think they should get it. It's a free market. It's capitalism. If someone's willing to pay you $1 million to go play football, that is your decision. But we also have to understand, and we also have to protect these kids and make sure these kids are making the best decisions, not only for the here and now, because the here and now is going to Texas A&M to get $1 million, but the future is how you're going to be developed in 3 or 4 years. Will you be a first-round pick? Are you going to the best coaching staff in terms of potentially developing you for the NFL? Some of these kids, they're just going to, who's going to pay me the most money right now? They're 17, 18-year-old kids. Duh, they were going to do this. Duh, they're not going to spend their money correctly. Duh, there's going to be locker room issues. This was so obvious, but Deion Sanders actually put out a Twitter video. Let me see if I've got this. We're going to react to this Deion Sanders video here.
NCAA, you got a little problem. Let me explain. See, with the NILs, which really ain't NIL because there ain't no name, image, and likeness. It's just pay-per-view right now. That's what they doing to the big boys. Little boys, we can't compete with that. But anyway, you got a problem. See, when you start paying athletes like they're professionals, you get athletes acting like they're professionals.
18-year-olds.
And you don't have staffs large enough and equipped enough to handle a young man with money. Let me go deeper. handle a young man that's making more money than some of the coaches on staff. You got a
What a
real
mess.
problem. So I suggest to you to allow college teams to hire more qualified men, that could handle these young men that's getting this money.
All right, so that little Twitter video from Deion Sanders suggesting that, listen, if you're going to give these kids massive NIL deals, you need to give them the sufficient financial resources in how to invest that money, saving that money. You need to give them good advice rather than a booster just going to a kid, like a booster from Texas A&M or Tennessee just going to a kid and saying, we're going to set you up, we're going to give you 7 figures, you're 17 years old, good luck. It's a huge issue, and the NCAA was so quick to enact this complete Wild West NIL situation. There was no safeguard. And we're seeing the unfortunate results of it already, and Deion Sanders, I'm sure, is seeing it when he's hearing what other coaches are saying about how some of these kids in some of these locker rooms are handling all this money, and he made a great point. These kids are getting paid more than coaches by a lot. I mean, there's been reports of $8 million deals. Arch Manning got like a $15 million offer. You know, he is the number 1 overall player in 2023. The deals are going to keep getting crazier. Even you've got like someone like Jordan Addison, who's a one and done, meaning he only has 1 year left before he goes to the NFL. He's getting multi-million-dollar offers with 1 year remaining before he goes to the NFL. Just imagine what 5-star recruits are getting. I'm sure they're actually underestimating the overall numbers, like when they said Texas A&M's class was worth $25 million. I could see it very easily being $50, maybe $75 million, because these programs are so desperate, and the boosters are actually, they love paying for these kids because they feel like they're a part of the program. They're like, if I use my money to get a 5-star player to come here through an NIL deal, then I am contributing to the program, and they feel a part of the success that the program has, you know, if the 5-star turns out to be a superstar. So Deion Sanders coming out and saying this is exactly right. The NCAA completely jumped the gun on the NIL. If you were going to come out and you were going to allow something like this, the first thing you have to do is make rules known to everyone. I was just recently talking about the statement that the NCAA put out, which, again, there's no rules. There is no rules. If there are no true rules in writing, you're going to have these boosters continue breaking the so-called made-up rules, which aren't even in writing. You need to put a set of rules, create a separate committee that is specifically designed to prevent NIL cheating, meaning a university's use of boosters to recruit a 5-star player to come to their program. That's the issue. We want NIL to be an on-campus amenity. You don't commit to a school because they're offering you $3 million. You commit to the school because of the development, because of the relationship you have with their coaches, and then when you get on campus, you can take advantage of the NIL situation, whether that's in Columbus, whether that's in Tuscaloosa, whether that's in Austin, Texas, wherever you go. But Deion Sanders comes out and he's saying, listen, it's so bad I have to make a video. There's nobody talking to these kids, giving these kids any advice. He's probably hearing rumors about the current situations when these 5-star 17, 18-year-old kids are getting $2 million contracts, and we're seeing the money probably being wasted on certain things by these players. No duh, they're 18-year-old kids. Of course they're going to waste the money if you don't give them the proper guidance. And even if you do give them the proper guidance, they still might waste the money. So this was so easy to see. It is a total mess. Once again, guys, I just think the NCAA went at this way too fast, and the other major problem is the NCAA has absolutely no governing power over any of these teams. That's why we saw Texas A&M's 2022 class go off the rails. Completely off the rails. They blatantly cheated. It is cheating. You are not allowed to do what Texas A&M did. They used NIL. They used their boosters to pay for players specifically to come to their school. but they knew that the NCAA wasn't going to do anything about it, and they said, listen, if we have the boosters, we've got the money, we're going to get the best players. And it may create a bad locker room, but we would rather have a bad locker room with really good players than do what we've been continuing to do, which is, Texas A&M's been recruiting well, but they're not on the level that Georgia is. They're not on the level that Alabama is. They're not on the level that Ohio State is. Not only did they get on that level, they passed it, and they had the best recruiting class we've ever seen in history, and that recruiting class was you're only getting a recruiting class like that due to NIL. That's the only possible situation when you've got all of these 5-star defensive linemen committing to you. There's no way that would happen without NIL, because these kids would see other 5-stars there and they would say, why would I go there? I'm not getting playing time. But they're committing there because they're being offered multi-million-dollar contracts. And you could also say they bet on themselves. They think they're going to be the best, player. They are a 5-star. They're going to beat out another kid. Normally, that's not what happens. You're not going to go to another place that has like 4 or 5 stars already committed in the same recruiting class. That's just not a smart idea. But they did it because Texas A&M boosters offered them a ton of money. And I think Texas A&M is actually going to kind of peel back a little bit, not be as aggressive when it comes to NIL in 2023. And I think the team to watch is the University of Miami. Miami has crazy NIL collectives. There's going to be some unbelievable fireworks. We saw the NCAA's statement. It was a completely weak statement about, coming after these teams, and we're going to do more to police this stuff, and the boosters aren't allowed. But again, there were no legitimate rules in this statement. There's no threat against any team that's already cheated in this statement. What I think is going to end up happening is they're going to make the University of Miami. They don't want to do it to an SEC school, but they're going to make the University of Miami the poster boy for the NIL booster cheating, and they're going to nail Miami, because I think Miami's going to have a crazy good 2023 class with maybe 4 or 5 stars, all through NIL, all through booster cheating. It's the same thing Texas A&M did, but they don't want to punish an SEC school, so I think they'll agree, listen, now in 2023, we're going to police it, and when Miami blatantly cheat, Miami's not going to be the only team in 2023 that uses NIL. Tennessee already did it. They signed a 5-star quarterback to an $8 million multi-year deal. But I think Miami is going to be the poster boy, and they're going to have a crazy recruiting class, but they're going to be the ones that get hit with the NIL sanctions for booster cheating. That is my opinion. They don't want to do it to an SEC's team. And of course, this whole situation, every single day we see a different story, about how ridiculous the NIL is. And all of these coaches, remember, the only reason the NCAA put out a statement is because the ADs at the schools that weren't cheating forced them to. Because they're basically saying this is so unfair, we don't want to cheat, but you're kind of forcing our hands if you're allowing other schools to cheat, right? And I think Mike Bray it was for Notre Dame, put out a statement where he was just like, coaches need to stop complaining about NIL. You need to get on board. You need to adjust. I'm not sure what he's talking about. So does he mean get on board? Like, should everyone just cheat? Because that's what would be going on if you're talking about you need to adjust to the current times. What we want is we want the cheating removed. We want the NIL opportunities for the kids on campus. Like when Ohio State's recruiting a kid, they're not going to say, listen, we will guarantee you a $2 million NIL dollar deal if you come here. They will say, look at CJ Stroud. Look at Trevion Henderson. Same thing with Alabama and Bryce Young. Alabama has been caught tampering in the transfer portal, but everyone does it. And Alabama does pay kids in the transfer portal. They paid Eli Ricks. But when it comes to the high school recruits, these programs like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Michigan, they are not willing to give these kids money just for them to come to their school because they think it'll be terrible for their culture. And Deion Sanders is out here saying, listen, I'm hearing stories about these kids. They're not spending their money right. The culture is a complete mess. The kids are getting envious of other kids. You've got a sophomore who only got a $100,000 NIL deal when there's a freshman who gets a $3 million NIL deal. It creates a horrible locker room environment. Horrible. So this whole situation is a complete mess. The NCAA really jumped the gun because all the people at ESPN basically guilt-tripped them, and they're like, oh, how are you not letting kids make money? You're so ridiculous. They never thought about the negatives of giving a 17 or 18-year-old kid, just straight up giving him a check of $1 million or $2 million. That could actually ruin your life. And it's actually significantly hurting some of these kids because they're choosing schools based off of NIL, not based off of developmental reasons for their future careers in the NFL. Oh my goodness, guys, so crazy stuff. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.